Right then, ST top end stripped down. So struggling to find where my cam timing was. That's my exhaust cam, that one's the inlet. So I couldn't get, I'll put a glove on. So I couldn't get these little buggers off with just a torque wrench. It seems like they had Loctite on them and then they've been buzzed on. But what I couldn't quite understand is there's a bit of damage on them. So I might have to just take that out. The markings there on the face, because they just make the bolts sit a bit proud. I just don't want that to be an issue for backing off when I put it back in the car. So I might see if I can try and get a file in there and get rid of some of the burrs off that. That one's alright, that's the exhaust one. I don't think there's any difference between inlet and exhaust. They're both the same as far as I'm aware, could be wrong. So the idea with this is now you have to pull the starter motor out to put your crank pin in. So that's my crank pin in place there. You have to pull the airbox out. There's not an awful lot of information how you do it. I did find a manual on Google that said where the crank pin was. It doesn't even tell you on Autodata that you have to pull the starter out on the version that I've got. So airbox is also a pain in the bum. So they're just located in them little rubber grommets there and there, the three. Water pipe I had to take off to get the bolts out of the starter. So there is a metal bracket that fits all the ECU that you know it's not been played about with if it's still got that metal bracket on it. It's just a safety bracket that fits over the ECU and goes on over the connectors. If you take the T20 torque screws out, you'll be able to lift be able to lift the ECU out on the loom, and then if you flip it over there'll be a 10mm nut. Wouldn't undo because it's seized, so we had to undo it with the buzz gun. It did break the cage, which I wasn't that bothered about. There's a rubber seal around there, heatsink on the ECU, so it actually has airflow, so the car's sucking in the air, well the turbo is sucking in, and then you've got airflow coming past the ECU to cool it down because it is bolted into the engine bay. So there's 4 T20s. To undo that I did have to pull up so the locating pegs, which are there and up there. So they're the locating pegs for that. Starter motors there. There's 2. They're on a stud, but there's a 13mm nut on each stud that you have to take off. So you can take a bracket off, which is there. That's the bracket. So that bracket you've got to undo with the water pipes. Just move that out of the way. Once your starter's out, you can rotate your crank round, put the pin in. So I've locked in there on that mark on my crank, which is there. You can just probably see it. So that lines up, that's locked. Where I was having a hard time with, because I couldn't take the little cam pickups out, I had to pull the battery tray out and everything to just get the 1/2" gun in with the T30 on to undo it. So in essence I didn't have to undo this, but I'm glad I did. So this is rocker cover old terminology and new terminology, you could class it as a camshaft carrier, because it doubles up as your rocker cover or valve cover, and it holds the rocker shafts down. So all the oil galleries, they're full of carbon, so I'll clean them out and make sure they're nice and free. So there's two little green O-rings that go on your VVT solenoids. They fit in them holes there, and then you've got O-rings sealing the spark plug hole. So all I want to do now, put the cams back in it, clean that up, put that back on. There's the timing tool. Put them in the cams, so then I can time it up. Take the engine mount back off, put the belt on, and make sure it's rotating nice and free by hand. If it's rotating nice and free by hand, and away we go and that's it, then time it back up again, put the pins in. Don't matter about the cams as long as the TDC and where they're meant to be. Pull that back off, order the new sealing rings, and I'm fairly sure there's a special type of Loctite sealant used for these, because it's like a red goo. So I'll have to order some of that. I have ordered new cam plugs, they've not come yet, which are them. So you need to pull them off to pull them little cam pickups out. They just literally sit against that shoulder there. And I might even try and get new cam seals as well, because they'll just pull off over the lobes of the cam. They just pull up, and then I can put a new one on, put a bit of that red goo around it to stop it leaking. As I say, new water pumps on now. So the idea of this is making sure it rotates nice and free. Because the belt had come off, I don't know if the piston has touched the valve or what. So what I want to do now is pull build everything back up, make sure it rotates nice and free, put the starter on and everything else, and see if it starts up. Once it starts up, I get a bit of temperature into it. I'll just put ordinary water in it for the time being. I have got 5 litres of concentrate antifreeze to go in this. So if it starts up and runs, no misfiring, no nothing, so then I turn it off, do my compression test. If my compression test is fine, I'll go and get my leak down tester from work, do a leak down on it, make sure all the valves are sealing, make sure that's right. It might be a little bit, as in, before I put the new O-rings in, because all I don't want to do now is I've got to run it up and make sure it's right and the compressions are right. I don't want to put sealant on that rocker cover, or I should say is, I don't want to put new O-rings in that for me then to pull the cylinder head off to sort the valves out if they have touched, and because I'm not sure if it's an interference engine or if it will get away with it and it's not done a valve in. Did a little bit of googling last night of head gasket set and new bolts, 170 quid off eBay for it's an L-ring gasket set. So I'm going to get this cleaned up and at least try and get it built back up, and so it's all timed up correctly and I can rotate it round. But yeah, so that's it for today. Keep posted on this one. Thanks for watching. Please leave a like if you like the content, and please subscribe and click the bell notification button. Any comments, let me know in the comment section below. And if you didn't like the video, please leave me a thumbs down and leave me a comment as to why you didn't like the video. Yeah, thanks for watching. Right then, back together, all timed up. rotates nice and free by hand, as fast as I can get it to go. We're not binding up, we're not locking up anymore. The only thing I did have to do, so locating pins, the little pegs, if you buy the Volvo kit, seem to be slightly fatter, so I've had to get a file and just file the pegs down so they fit inside the cams, so they locate in like that. Some little pegs line up with the little notches in the cam, so the face sits flush on the cam, and then that bolt just screws in. There is an 11mm bolt, by the way, so it's probably Imperial thread or something, with it being a Volvo, maybe. I might be wrong. So belt's tight. Gotta come take it back off. Just made myself a little list. So the list that I've got is I need to pull the sprockets off, put Loctite on them because that one's come loose. I've tightened it up just to do this, so I know that there's no valves touching or anything. So before I undo that again, I need to pull the top cover off, get me new O-rings for my VVT valves, or your oil feed control valves, new O-rings for them, new spark plug O-rings, and get the proper sealant that they say you should use. I think it's like Loctite 510 or something like that, so I've heard on the forums with them. I'll have to do a bit more research and see what's what, which is the best stuff. So then, next step then is lock the pins in, pull the cover back off, pull the cams out, clean everything again, make sure it's right. Put the O-rings in, put the cams back in, put a little bit of oil on the surfaces and everything else, on the lobes and the peaks of the cams and the bearing surfaces where they sit and ride, just so it's right. Get the torque specs for this cover, sealant on it, bang it back on with the cams, tighten it all down, so while that's going off I can put my pins in the back. My pin's already in the crank. You have to take the starter out, by the way, to lock the crank in. There's a little T50, I think it is, T55, something like that. It is, got it here actually, it's hiding. That badger, that one there, there's a little copper crush washer on it as well, so but that'll go again. So that to pour in once I've all timed up and everything's right. Then the belt's back on and I've tightened the sprockets with the Loctite. I know I've got to take the tensioner back out and put Loctite on that bolt, put that in, retension it. Currently how it's sat is what Autodata tells me is how that is. So it's saying under 20 degrees Celsius according to Autodata. I'm sorry I can't zoom in. Let's see if I can lift it up so I can show you. So Autodata, sorry if you're upside down now. So Autodata tells me that under 20 degrees C, the little locator there as it sits is right. That's how you want it. And then that plate at the back moves freely. The little metal plate that just moves in and out. It's like they're on the other tensioner anyway, so should be fine. So yeah, rotated it round. The belt's not where that belt is sat now, is how that is going to ride. So as we are there, so that's how it should be. Obviously before I do it again and I've got everything buttoned up and everything's tight, I will rotate it again to make sure that the belt will not slip off and it's riding, the pulley's right, and yeah. But water pump's tight, the idler is tight with Loctite on the bolts, and it'll just be a case of building it back up, put the battery back in, starter back on, coolant, back in. I'm not doing a compression test on it, just it'll be a lot more work to do a compression test on it now. So if I go and order the bits tonight, I can strip it down tomorrow and have it ready for the bits to come, get it all cleaned up, so it's just a case of putting them in. I'll just leave the O-rings in just in case. But yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.